Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Kelly Warner, and I'm the Director of Celt, or the Center of Excellence for Learning Technology at Simpson. And today I want to talk with you about some ways that we can increase the motivation of our online students. So let's get started. So today I want to talk with you about ways that we can increase the motivation of our online students. So first of all, let's get started with a quote by William Butler Yeats. This is a commonly used quote within education. He says, "Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire." And that's what our time today is going to be focused on. How do we light the fire, so to speak, of our online students and get them excited about learning? Some of the principles that we're going to talk about today could also be applied to your face-to-face or hybrid courses. However, we're going to look at this issue of student motivation through an online lens, looking at online students specifically to see how we can meet their needs and increase their motivation. So really quick, I would like for you to reflect and share about your current experience with student motivation. So if you could just take 1 minute, you can pause this video to think about one strategy or activity that you currently use in any of your online or regular courses to increase student motivation. Or you can think about one strategy or activity that you yourself completed as a student to keep yourself motivated and on track. So go ahead and pause this video and take a moment just to think about that. Okay, welcome back. So now you have thought of your new strategy, and if you want to, I would encourage you, if you could share your strategy in the comment section below this video. That'll kind of help us create some dialogue and just be thinking about different ways that we can increase motivation. So go ahead and pause this video again and share your comment or idea below. All right, now that you have shared your comment or idea, we're ready to continue on. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, we'll have generated some additional ideas that you can use in your online course. So for today's agenda, for the agenda of this presentation, first we're going to define Generation Z and the role of the online instructor. Second, we are going to ask and answer the question, what motivates online students? And lastly, we're going to identify 4 areas in which instructors can increase motivation. So let's go ahead and dive in and get started by defining Generation Z. So Generation Z, these are the majority of our incoming college students. They were born in the late 1990s through 2015. They are also entrepreneurial, and they appreciate practical and real-life experiences and skills. So this is something that sets them apart from the millennial or Generation Y students. They also are digital natives. If you think about how technology has changed since the late 1990s, obviously it looks vastly different today. But still, throughout their entire lives, they've had access to the internet, Wi-Fi, cell phones, things that it's just crazy for us to think about. So they really are used to handling and learning new technology. They're also we-centric, meaning that they are group-oriented. They desire to help and please others. And lastly, they desire to make an impact. So they are really looking for ways that they can improve the world around them and make a difference. So now, with those characteristics in mind, let's think about how Generation Z views their education. First of all, they desire their education to give them practical skills. And this relates to my second point here, which is that they wish to see a connection between what they're learning in the classroom and their goals. So they're really looking for a practical education that is going to help them achieve their goals, whether those are career, life goals, etc. They need to see those connections in order to remain interested and motivated. If they don't understand why they're asked to learn this content, if they're not sure how it's going to benefit them down the road, it's going to be much more difficult for them to remain motivated to persist and complete your course. And lastly, they are concerned about the cost of college. So they grew up in the midst of the 2008 recession. They watched their parents, their older siblings struggle economically during this time. So they're really mindful of the cost of their education. So they view their education as an investment. They're investing their time and their money into this, and in return, they are looking for these practical skills that will help them advance their careers, their profession, etc. So now let's look at 5 factors that are indicative of success of online or distance education students. So first of all, their intention to complete coursework. Obviously very important for a course for them to actually intend to complete the work. Second, early submission of work. So if you have students that are submitting work prior to the deadline, they are more likely to be successful. And third, prior completion of other distance education courses. So if you have students that have already completed an online course, they already have a rough idea of what to expect, what an online course typically looks like and entails. And fourth, the level of interaction provided in the course. So if there is a higher level of interaction, they're typically more likely to be successful. And lastly is the course relevance to the students' real-world experiences. So if students are able to see how the content, how the knowledge they're going to learn is going to apply to them and their long-term goals, they're more likely to be successful. So if you already have a student coming in with these factors, you're good to go. You have just a really superstar student. That's awesome. But what do we do about the students that they're coming in and they have never done an online class before, and they might be struggling with completing the coursework? How are we supposed to encourage them to really stay on track and complete the course? So on the flip side of that, let's look at some reasons that students typically drop online courses. The first is the feeling isolated and experiencing confusion and anxiety. So with an online course, students are really asked to interpret the course, putting all of these different pieces together into one cohesive view and being able to navigate through the course relatively independently. So depending on the student, this may be really overwhelming and they might be experiencing confusion. They're not sure what the instructor wants, and that might lead to them dropping the course. A second reason would be technology failure, whether that's their own technology or the campus's technology. And then lastly, lack of instructor feedback. So if they feel that they really don't know how they're doing in the class, they're more likely to drop and not complete that course. So my big question for this presentation, and really for my research as I was conducting my research, are what are steps that the online instructor can take to encourage motivation and positive behavior? So you're going to have students in your online course that are naturally your superstar students, if you will. They're always completing their work on time or before the deadline. They're very interactive in the forums. But then you might have another group of students that they're just kind of just getting by maybe, or maybe they're even struggling in your course. What are some ways that we can get them really excited about learning? How can we light the fire, so to speak, and just get them engaged and excited about this class? And really, how do we help all of our students, not just those superstar students, succeed within the online learning environment? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I also want to take some time to define the role of the online instructor. So the role of the teacher is layered with complexities. In the online environment, the instructor creates a learning environment for the students, and once created, he or she coaches and guides the student through the environment. So the instructor not only needs to be knowledgeable about the environment or the content, but they need to be able to coach their students throughout the course. So think of your online course as an intricately created map or environment, and you're trying to guide the students through that. So as a guide, you need to know about the content and also how to motivate your students and keep them on track. So another way that I was thinking about this was those survivor shows that you see on TV, where they'll take someone in a helicopter, they give them a map, maybe some primitive supplies, and they drop them off in this location with a map, and they say you have 7 days to get to point B over here, and we'll see you on the other side, we'll be there to pick you up in the helicopter, hope you make it. That is not how we want our online courses to be. We don't want to just drop the students off with their syllabus and some resources and say, we'll see you at the finish line and let you know how you do. We really want to be with them every step of the way so we can coach and guide them throughout their journey. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about ways we can motivate your students. We're talking about going beyond just delivering the content, but really helping your students succeed and be successful. So continuing on, looking back at our agenda, so first we defined Generation Z and the online instructor's role of being a facilitator, a guide, and a coach. So next we're going to ask and answer the question, what motivates online students? And first of all, why do we even care about motivation? Why is motivation important? Motivation is the prerequisite of student success. It is especially critical for online students to have a high level of motivation, and this is because they experience a greater level of independence than students who are in the typical face-to-face classroom. Online students are in control of their own learning and pace, and students are typically free to complete coursework whenever they would like within a deadline schedule, and it's really at their own pace. So they have to be able to regulate how many times do I need to watch that video before I really understand it. Do I need to reread the chapter? Is there something that I'm missing or not understanding? They need to be able to regulate that on their own. Another component of motivation is self-efficacy. So self-efficacy here, we're referring to the conviction of one's value and capability to organize and put into action what was necessary to successfully move ahead and complete an online course. So if students believe that it's within their own power to be successful, they're more likely to remain motivated. If they believe that their success is out of their control, there's no way that they're going to be able to pass this class, they're obviously not going to be very motivated or very engaged. So we want for students to take responsibility over their own learning, to realize that they can be successful if they put the work in, and we're here to provide them with the support that they need in order to be successful and in order to get there. So taking a more specific look at motivation, this is a music model of student motivation that was created by Rob Kelly, and this model is specific to online students. So he believed that there are 5 components within student motivation. So we have empowerment, usefulness, success, interest, and lastly caring, all spelling out music. So first, starting off with empowerment. We need to empower our online students. Let them feel empowered by allowing them to make choices when possible. So for example, if you have a learning outcome and you need your students to demonstrate their progress towards that learning outcome, maybe you could have a choice of a couple of different assessments or assignments that students could complete to show their progress. Really give them some choice and let them choose the option that's most appealing to them or believe would be the best representation of their knowledge. Next is usefulness. So as previously stated, Generation Z, they really need to understand the why. Why are they completing this class? Why are they completing this assignment? They need to feel that the knowledge is useful, that there's a purpose for this. And ideally, if we can relate our course learning outcomes, what they're doing in the classroom, to their own professional long-term goals, that's ideal. If they feel like that what they're doing in the class is going to be beneficial for them to be able to meet their own vision of their life, their own career goals, that is really ideal. Next is success. So the belief, again, of self-efficacy, that they can be successful if they put in the effort. What I am not saying is that we need to create easy online courses. Our online courses need to be just as rigorous as our face-to-face classes. However, we just need to create a clear pathway to success, showing them you will be successful if you complete these steps, and this is what I, as the instructor, will do to help you get there. And then also another component of that is providing feedback frequently so students know how they're doing. We don't want for our students to be confused and thinking, well, I hope I'm getting this, or I hope that I understand what's going on. We want for them to have a clear picture of where they are and what they need to do to get where they would like to be. So next, looking at interest. And there are two components to interest here. There is situational interest, meaning that this activity or module is engaging, and there's individual interest, and that's where our students are personally interested in the content. And this is the kind of interest that we really want to purposefully generate in our classes. We want to understand what interests our students, what are their goals, what would they like to do long term, and how can they relate the content they're going to learn in this class to those goals. And lastly, caring. So the instructor and peers care about their success. You need to feel like that they are not just in their isolated little bubble and no one really knows what their status is, or if they don't really care if they pass or not. We need to create an online learning environment for our students where they feel like that they can reach out to the instructor if they have questions. The instructor does care whether or not they do well in the class. We don't want to have these robotic courses where it feels like everyone is just kind of isolated and out on their own. We really need to intentionally create a learning environment. This is something that organically happens within a face-to-face class. You can typically read students' body language to see, are they understanding this? Are they tuning out? And to apply that to an online course, it just requires a bit of additional thought and maybe modifications, adapting. You may not be able to read their body language, but maybe if a student, they typically post really great forum posts, and then 1 week it just isn't very good, maybe checking in with them and seeing, is everything okay? Do you have any questions? Is there anything that I can help you with? Just really help your students realize that you're there to help them. So going back to our agenda for today, defining Generation Z and the instructor's role as, again, facilitator, coach, and guide. And then we asked and answered the question, what motivates online students? So we have that music model of empowerment, usefulness, success, interest, and caring. And lastly, we're going to identify 4 areas in which instructors can increase motivation. So our areas that we're going to cover today are goal setting, effective course design, instructional support, and then lastly, interpersonal support. So let's get started with goal setting. So goal setting, students maintain motivation by setting short and long-term goals. So you can think about this like a marathon runner training for a marathon. They need to set those short-term goals of increasing their time and their distance daily and weekly in order to achieve their long-term goal of running and completing that marathon. So in a similar way, students need to set short and long-term goals for themselves in your course. So these goals, they can be course specific. So for example, I want to complete this assignment by a specific date. I want to earn a specific grade on this assignment, etc. Or ideally, really where the magic happens is when you can relate these goals to their personal and professional goals. Help your students make connections between learning outcomes and their individual goals. So some students, they might be able to do this on their own, where they realize, wow, this information is going to be really helpful for me in 5 years when I want to open my own business, or whatever their goal is. But other students, they might need a bit of help to understand how this content, how this knowledge can really help them down the road. So you might need to help your students make those connections. Get to know them at the beginning of the class and just make some observations about, wow, I'm so excited you're in this class because you're going to learn X, Y, and Z, which will help you achieve your goals. So once students have set their goals, how do we help them achieve them? So first we have time management strategies. So scheduling time to complete coursework. And Celt, we're going to be releasing a separate web series video about time management, so stay tuned for that. And I know what you might be thinking right now. Wait, I am an online instructor. I'm responsible for helping them with the content. They should be able to do time management on their own because they're adult learners and they just need to figure that out. While that would be great in an ideal world, remember, our online instructors, they're not just delivering the content. They are coaching and guiding their students throughout the learning experience. And that might be with helping them with their time management strategies. So second, we have prioritizing. Prioritizing coursework with family and other work obligations. So a way that we can help students prioritize is by giving them a clear and consistent deadline schedule. So if they know all of my assignments are typically due on this specific day of the week at this specific time, they can then prioritize their time. So if they need to work on specific days of the week when they aren't working or helping with their family, they can do that. So a way to help them is to set that clear and consistent deadline schedule. Next, we have learning strategies. So students need to understand that the learning strategies that will help them in an online environment may be different from strategies that have been successful for them in a face-to-face environment. So helping your students think through, what is it going to look like for them to be successful in this class? Also have to think about the cognitive and affective or psychological effort students have to put forth in an online course. It's typically higher than a face-to-face course. So helping students cope with that and find a way to be successful in your class. And lastly, setting rewards for achieving their goals. So these could be academic, where you're giving your students grades, extra credit, feedback. It could be personal, where students reward themselves, like they reward themselves with going out to the movies with their friends. Or it could be professional, so being able to apply that knowledge to work or life. So here are some quick tips for increasing motivation through goal setting. So first we have set a clear and consistent deadline schedule. And next we have develop a checklist for each module or unit to help students monitor their progress. So if your class is separated into weeks or into different topics, you could create a checklist for them to complete for each unit. So they can really visually keep track of how they're doing and what they need to complete in your class. All right, so we have talked about goal setting. So now we're going to dive into the realm of effective course design. So there are 4 principles of effective course design, and those are interest, relevance, expectancy, and satisfaction. So first, talking about interest. How can we get our students interested in our courses? So first is interaction, providing opportunities for students to interact with the instructor, you, as well as their peers and the content. So this could take a variety of different forms. It could be completing forums. It could be creating their own videos about the content, watching their peers, peer teach one another, etc. Also, controversy, so provoking safe debate and discussion. So I think that we have all experienced those online forum posts, which are relatively stagnant. So the instructor has a response or a question, and all of the students answer the response or the question in a very similar fashion. So there really is no debate or discussion. Now, this might also happen in your face-to-face classes, and what you might do would be to play devil's advocate or really challenge them to think at a deeper level. So we want to do that within the online environment. And a way to do that is to have a little bit of controversy. Maybe for your forum prompts, have it be a stronger prompt where students really have to take a stand on something and interact with their peers. Now, the key word here is safe. You have to set ground rules for debate and discussion, whether that's online or face-to-face. So you do need to set those ground rules of what is and is not appropriate within the online forums. I think we've all experienced on social media when there are heated debates about political posts, etc. And while those posts, they are engaging, the people are obviously very interested in the conversation, they're not safe conversations. They can quickly turn into bullying and other attacks. So keyword here is safe. We want for it to be a little bit of controversy so we can have debate and discussion, really challenge each other. But again, that keyword there is safe. Also, learning styles. If you could appeal to different learning styles and vary the delivery of the content. So it can be really easy for online instructors to get stuck in kind of a rut of text-based instruction, where students, they read the textbook, they write a reflection paper, write a forum post, read maybe some PowerPoint slides. We really want to try to engage various learning styles. So if you could kind of liven things up a bit, maybe with having videos or having students complete projects, work in groups, really just try to think of ways that you can appeal to a variety of learning styles. So next we have competition. And you can challenge your students to compete amongst themselves. So one strategy that I've heard is if you have a forum post, maybe say the best response to a student's post gets 1 point of extra credit. Something like that, where it may not even be anything really significant. In a 1,000 point class, 1 point of extra credit, it really isn't that significant. But it's just a way to kind of create some engagement and some competition between your students. So next we're going to talk about relevance. So relate, show how the instruction relates to the learner. Again, going back to the concept of Generation Z and their need to know how this content, how this knowledge is really going to help them. If you can find a way to relate what they're learning in class to their interests, to their passions, to their goals, that is ideal. Next is create a learning environment. Be a learner yourself. Really be personable with your students and let them know that this is a safe place where everyone is encouraged to learn, including the instructor. And then also showing the relationship between objectives and outcomes. So students in an online course, they really need to understand why. If you think about your typical face-to-face class, when you hand out the assignment, you typically don't just hand out a rubric and not really say anything else about it. You usually have some kind of a conversation about why this assignment is important, why it's going to help them understand the content. So similarly, you need to have that kind of exchange with your online students. Help them understand why you're asking them to complete this task, and then relate how completing this task is going to help them down the road. Solve, so promote problem-based inquiry. Really let your students be independent researchers. Maybe give them a problem or a case study and ask them to think through that on their own. This can be, again, helpful when you're trying to relate instruction to their individual goals and their contexts. So next we're going to look at expectancy. So navigation, make the course navigation appear easy. For your online students, try to make everything as clear and as straightforward as possible. They understand not only how to navigate your online course page, but they understand how to navigate throughout the actual course. They know what's coming up, what you're expecting, etc. Communicate. Post information in a clear and easy to access format. This is critical for your online students. They really need to be able to find those resources and help. Expectations. Set clear expectations at all levels. So students know what they need to do to be successful in your course. They know what they need to do for individual assignments and activities. They really need to have a clear understanding of what you're looking for and what it's going to take for them to be successful. Okay, moving on to satisfaction. So application, provide opportunities for students to use knowledge in the real world. This will again help hammer in how this course is relevant to them, how it's going to be helpful for them in the future. Feedback, frequently and consistently give your students feedback. This can both be positive feedback and constructive feedback. So they need to know what areas they're doing well and the areas that they need to improve. Also praise, reward accomplishments with positive feedback. It can be really easy in an online environment where everything is typed out to have a somewhat passive voice, or you could just say good job on a paper. Whereas if you're handing out the paper in class, you would say good job, I'm so proud of you. You've really learned this concept and I can see your growth from last week. Really have that kind of engaging conversation with your students. It just not only makes them feel good, but it lets them know that you care and that you know how they're doing in the course. So 4 areas in which instructors can increase motivation. We've talked about goal setting, effective course design, and now we're going to talk about instructional support. So here are some instructional support strategies. The first is community. Create a course orientation which prepares students for online learning and begins the community building process. So this course orientation, it could look different depending on your course and your students. I know for Celt, we have a sample course orientation, which allows students to complete a self-assessment, letting them know what's expected in an online course and asking them, are they really prepared for an online course? Some students, they have this preconceived idea of what an online class looks like. They're thinking, oh, this is going to be less work, less rigorous than a face-to-face class. And we really need to give them our expectations up front. And a course orientation can help you do that. You can also have another component of a course orientation would be introductions, where you have students introduce themselves or let you know what their long-term goals are, so you can help relate those goals to the course. Syllabus. The syllabus should be clear and shows the big picture of the course, letting them know what the course is going to look like from day 1 to the last day. And really letting them know what should they be getting out of this class. Besides completing these individual assignments, what really is your goal for them? What do you want for them to walk away with? Resources. Include links to campus and other resources on your Moodle page. So for example, you can include links to the library, our Academic Success Center, our Writing Center, just letting them know what resources are available for them. And next, forums. So include both formal and informal forums within your course. So one example would be a Q&A forum, where students can go to post any questions that they might have. And then other students or you, the instructor, could respond to those questions as needed. You could also provide individual and group feedback. So for example, if a student turns in an assignment, you give them individual feedback of great job, or oh, it looks like you need to maybe revisit this content, let me know if you have any questions. But also give them group feedback. Maybe on a weekly basis, just send out an encouraging message or note saying either, great job you guys, you really understand this concept. Or on the flip side, if they aren't understanding something, just say, I've noticed that some of you are kind of struggling with this concept. If you have any questions, please let me know and I'm happy to help you. Flexibility. Be flexible to accommodate students' needs when possible. Now, this doesn't mean to be a total pushover and not have any kind of deadlines and let students turn in paperwork whenever they would like. That's not something that I would suggest. What I am suggesting is being flexible as you can be. So if a student has maybe an idea for an alternative, if they just need a little bit of flexibility, try to be flexible when you can. It just helps them realize that you're a real person and that you care about them. But again, you need to use your discretion as far as when you can or cannot be flexible. So here are some quick tips for instructional support. First, create a virtual scavenger hunt. So if you have maybe like a list of different areas or resources that students are going to need to access, you can create a virtual scavenger hunt where they have to take screenshots of those pages and submit those to you. So for example, if you know for your class your students are going to be doing a lot of research, challenge them to find a specific book or article within our online library catalog and take a screenshot of that and send it to you. So you know, okay, they know how to navigate through the library and they can find articles and resources. Another example is to use icebreakers so students can get to know one another. So if you have like an introduction forum, maybe ask them some of those questions about what their long-term goals are, what they would like to do professionally, but also have some kind of more lighthearted questions so students can just be getting to know one another on a more friendly, informal level. Also, again, include that Q&A forum so students can ask and respond to their peers' questions. and create a clear syllabus which shows the big picture of the course. Let them know what you really want for them to walk away with. So we have talked about goal setting, effective course design, instructional support strategies, and finally, we're going to talk about interpersonal support strategies. So the idea here is that communication is key. You really need to communicate clearly and frequently with your online students. So one way to do that is through introductions. Provide an opportunity for student and instructor introductions. So this could be a forum thread where people post introductions, introducing themselves, letting you know what their goals are, or I would even challenge you, have them create videos of themselves so you can see what your students look like and really get to know them, put a face to the name. It really just makes your course more personal, and it allows your students to get to know one another and their peers. So communicate regularly and proactively. Let them know that you're there to help. So if you're noticing a student's not doing well, maybe don't wait for students necessarily to come to you to ask for help. Be a little more proactive and ask them if there's anything that they need or anything that's unclear. Next is attitude. So assume that your students want to be successful, and this is really key in your communication with your students. Really having that tone of, hey, I know that you want to be successful. Is there anything that I can help you with? Or if you feel like that a student, they're just not doing very well, check in with them and just say, hey, I just kind of noticed this. Is there anything I can do to help? I really want for you to be successful in this class. Instead of using more negative language, try to be positive when you can. Feedback. So provide timely feedback and offer suggestions for improvement. So not all feedback needs to be positive. They also need to know where they need to improve, areas that they need to revisit and recover. So just be sure to provide that feedback in a timely fashion so they actually have time to implement that and either review the content or adjust their plan of action for the rest of the semester. So here are some quick tips for interpersonal support. Create a getting to know you survey. So with this getting to know you survey, you could have your students complete this at the beginning of the semester and maybe ask them not only just some basic background information, ask them about their long-term goals, what they would like to do professionally. And this will then give you an opportunity to interact with them and show them how this course can relate to them personally. Next is regularly participating in the forums. So depending on the size of your class, the idea of responding to all of your students may be overwhelming and may seem like a burden. Now, you don't necessarily need to respond to every single post, but if you could just respond at least to a couple or a few students' posts, that just lets them know that you actually read what they're writing and that you actually take the time to read through them and that you really care about their thoughts and their input. So finally, report concerns to Simpson University's care team. So if you do have a student who's just not engaged in your course, please report them to our care team. There may be something going on that our care team can help with. So if you do have any academic concerns, please report those to our care team. So again, those 4 areas, we have goal setting, effective course design, instructional support, and interpersonal support. So going back to our agenda for today, defining Generation Z and the online instructor's role. So remember, the online instructor, you're more than just delivering the content, you're also helping them to coach them and guide them through your course. Also asking the question, what motivates online students? And if you remember those music principles, we have empowerment, usefulness, success, interest, and caring. And 4 areas in which instructors can increase motivation. We talked about goal setting, effective course design, instructional support strategies, and interpersonal support strategies. So lastly, if you would just take a moment just to think about the principles that we've talked about today and potentially how you could apply those to your online courses to motivate your students. And please share your thoughts about this topic in the comments below. I'll be sure to respond to those comments. So please feel free. I want this to be an open discussion, not just one-ended. So please be sure to comment and let me know what you're thinking about for student motivation, and be sure to share your ideas with our peers. This is a learning community. Here are some references, so all of the research that I conducted for this presentation, and if you would like a comprehensive list, all of those references will also be posted in the description box of this video. And finally, thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation, and please feel free to contact me with any questions. Again, you can reach Celt by going to celt@simpsonu.edu, send us an email there, and I would be happy to help you. So thank you again for watching, and thank you again for joining me today, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.